Greetings and welcome to MMO Training Camp. This week we're starting off a three-part series that focuses on the different roles that a player could perform in a group environment, starting off with tanking. The tanking is something that's very near and dear to me. I actually started off tanking in World of Warcraft as a dwarf protection warrior, and today I'm going to show you some stuff about the current iteration of warriors in World of Warcraft with Craxigar, my level 44 Orc Warrior. So I'm going to go ahead and enter World. The first thing I want to talk about is gear, actually. I've got almost a full set of heirloom items on Craxigar here. The heirloom items are items that scale with your level and grant bonus experience. Let me show you what one looks like. So you get the experience gain, and then right underneath that you can see requires level 1 to 100, and in parentheses 44, because currently Craxigar is level 44. So the majority of players that you'll encounter in the Dungeon Finder, which is what we're going to be using to show you some dungeon footage, the majority of those folks have almost a full set of heirlooms. So the dungeons tend to get kind of ripped apart pretty quick, but I can still show you some of the basics about tanking. I'm going to show you some of my abilities here on my action bar that are part of the main rotation. So the filler ability is Devastate and has a chance to reset the cooldown of Shield Slam and cause it to grant 5 more rage. Shield Slam, just slam the crap out of something with your shield. Heroic Strike, just an extra strike that's off the global cooldown. A global cooldown is a cooldown that is triggered when you use an ability. However, it doesn't apply to Heroic Strike. That global cooldown is usually 1 second, but for Heroic Strike, it doesn't apply, so it's awesome. Shield Block, raise your shield and block some attacks, so it helps you mitigate damage, which is one of the jobs of the tank. Revenge, one of the highest threat abilities you have. It hits 3 different targets, and anytime you dodge or parry, it resets the cooldown on Revenge. So you'll find that in larger packs of enemies, you'll get a lot of Revenge reset cooldowns. And then you've got Thunderclap. Blasts all enemies within a certain distance and reduces their movement speed. Now, because I have a passive ability, let me open up the spellbook and show you what that is. This passive ability, Deep Wounds, Thunderclap will actually spread a bleed damage over time to anything that I hit it with. So that's just a little bit of extra threat that's hitting everything that I am near when I use Thunderclap. So I'm going to show you these stances real quick too. Over here, these are the tooltips on the right hand side for battle stance, just a generic stance for dealing damage. And defensive stance is the stance we're going to be using. It reduces the damage you take and increases the threat. So, what is threat? Threat is sort of the hand-wavy number out in the cosmos somewhere that determines how angry enemies are at you. And of course, another job as a tank is to make them really angry at you and hold their attention indefinitely, because you are also capable of mitigating that damage better than any other role. Better than damage dealers, and much better than healers. So one other thing I'll mention, or a couple other things I'll mention actually. Over here we have Last Stand on the bar all the way on the far right here. That increases current and max health by 30%, so that's literally a Last Stand. If you're about to die, you can pop that. And then Taunt. That's another pivotal ability that you have as a tank. And all tanks have some version of that. It just lets you get some snap threat and forces an enemy to attack you no matter what it was attacking previously. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the Dungeons and Raids panel using the I key and hit Find Group. And generally tanking queues are very fast, and this time it was no disappointment. So great. So we're going to go ahead and jump in this dungeon, show you some tanking. Now, back when I started tanking as a warrior, Devastate, my filler ability, was actually an ability known as Sunder Armor. And Sunder Armor would reduce the amount of armor that an enemy has. And it would stack, and of course each time you use Sunder Armor, it would increase the duration that Sunder Armor was present, of course, on the enemy. So basically, you're a semi-permanent damage increase against that target because his armor would be reduced. Well, now they got away from that, and I actually love what they've done in recent years with the toolkit for the Protection Warrior, because with Revenge hitting multiple targets, with Thunderclap, and with the way that defensive stance actually works, where all of your abilities while you're in defensive stance just passively give you extra bonus threat while you have defensive stance active, it's really nice. I mean, it used to be back in the day, you young whippersnappers won't understand, but back in the day, you actually had to, constantly switch targets, shield slam stuff, sunder it, switch targets and kind of sunder other, new targets. Nowadays, it's just much easier to hold threat on many different targets. You'll see me just kind of zinging through this place. The other main jobs, so there's 3 main jobs of tanks. I've gone over them. The first is holding threat. The next is absorbing damage, and then the third one is you're stepping into a leadership role when you decide that you want to play a tank. You dictate, as you can see, I'm kind of dictating here how quickly we're moving through this place, because that's just another part of what tanks do. And in general, if you're in a raiding guild, the main tank is usually responsible for organizing the raid, making sure everyone is where they need to be, and following mechanics. Now, this is just the general case. Not every guild's like that. As a matter of fact, my own guild is not actually like that, personally. We kind of lead more by counsel. And of course, our main tanks, we actually run 2 main tanks. One is a warrior and one is a feral druid. And they kind of do this by committee when we're in a raid. Of course they dictate the flow, but they are responsible for the first 2 responsibilities overall, absorbing damage and holding threat. And we have a number of other... Ooh, I'm going to use Last Stand there because I did kind of low. Yeah, we have a number of other officers who help, and that's why I say by committee or by council our raids are led. But the common perception of tanks is you are a leader, and that's a huge part of the reason why tanks are also associated with, more than any other class, I feel, with burnout. Because while healing is also very stressful in a raid environment, tanking, you're having to manage different personalities, if you are in fact also raid leading at the same time. And that can be kind of trying on your patience and, your concentration, and it's tiring. I mean, when you're raiding, 3-4 hours a week for several hours, several times a week, that can be, kind of, like I said, kind of draining on your patience. So that's why I think tanks kind of get that perception or that role. And that's actually my theory on why tanking queues are so quick, is because they have that added responsibility where it's not just one fold. Like a DPS is just focused strictly on maximizing their DPS and making sure that they don't do something silly on some random mechanic and end up dying. Is there another boss up here? Yes, there is. He's right here. Okay. I'm gonna refer back to my map every once in a while here because it's been a while since I've tanked, so I do apologize if I'm not perfectly following the rotation. I honestly didn't even look anything up about tanks, so I'm actually not following my own advice. But, in a way, because I did tell you guys to do your research. But, for me, I mean, I'm more of a seasoned veteran player, so I can kind of get away with it a little bit. And I'm also familiar with warriors from playing one some years back. So, yeah. So, as you can see, we are absolutely ripping through this place. But it's still kind of my responsibility to make sure we continue at a reasonable pace for, you know, our gear level, our experience level, and a lot of people that have heirlooms, they're going to tend to have more experience too. So I have a little bit of leeway as a tank, being able to kind of just rip through this place. So something I like to do is, see, I'll use my pummel ability to move these and group these guys up. And you're going to see here, well, I was hoping that I'd get a ton of resets on Revenge, so I can show you how you can typically, like, you pull a big group of enemies, you can kind of get a ton of resets on this, on Revenge, because since so many enemies are attacking you, you're getting tons of dodges and parries, so you're able to. And see, this is what ends up happening in groups where everyone has heirlooms. You don't actually get to do your job sometimes. And I actually mentioned, so I'll interrupt that guy and bring him back to the group here like that. Doing that and actually dragging casters that are spellcasting back into a group by interrupting them is just a way to increase the group's overall damage. Because they're able to hit all of those targets with area of effect abilities, so it's a good thing to do. Also, it reduces the amount of damage that they're doing to me, which is another good thing about pummeling them and interrupting them. Guy. Oh, we got some more enemies up here I gotta get threat on. Okay, so yeah, we are just ripping through here. And I am gonna pull this boss over here. See, they're pulling, and I want to pull this boss. See, this becomes a problem. That's why I said, as DPS, don't tank. Don't take the tank's job away from it. Some people really enjoy, I mean, even with the, some people really work well under that kind of stress. Like, if they're actually raid leading or group leading, they actually enjoy that added stress, or still really enjoy the role of tanking, and that part specifically, the part about leadership, regardless of how stressful it might get. They find it rewarding, and you have to be a very, very special type of person to be that kind of that level of exhibit that level of selflessness, I guess you could say, because again, it can be unforgiving. I mean, you see here, I'm trying to hold thread on stuff, and people are kind of pulling without letting me pull enemies. Oh, by the way, if you're unfamiliar with what I mean by pull, it's kind of self-explanatory based on context, but pulling is just when you engage a group of enemies. That's what pulling means. Alright. We clear out the rest of this trash. We got another boss over here. This dungeon's almost over. I'm gonna let the film kind of run, but those are the basics on tanking. I mean, now you have an idea of what you're getting into when you're considering becoming a tank as a main role. Risen Hammersmith just popped up here. Alright, now we go back upstairs and we'll get to finishing this dungeon here. We're almost at the end. And another big pack. Pull here. Yeah, see, that's a quick reset on. That's another quick reset on. Yeah, see, Revenge is just going crazy when we pull these big... And that's what you want to use, because it's a high threat ability and it hits multiple targets. So if you are engaging this many targets especially, I mean, I believe, I may be mistaken, but I believe it's actually the top ability based on what the damage looks like. Even on single target, it seems like it does massive damage, even on one target. So I'm pretty sure that's your highest priority. Oh, they just pulled another room over here. See, I gotta run back and babysit them. So, oh, last stand. Woo. Almost got wrecked right there. Alright. Alright, so... we've just got this... Actually, we've got Instructor Halford over here in this court, or in this room over here. So we'll take... Oh, someone pulled him again. Okay. Alright, he's down. Now we just have Balthazar. Oh, we forgot the Postmaster. That's okay. You have to go and clear some extra trash. Alright, let's mess this guy up. Demon Filth. Oh, he's immune to interrupts, too. Ooh. Yes, your Revenge is doing like 1,000 damage. Your Shield Slam's like doing 150, so I'm pretty sure that's going to be the best ability you can use even on single target as a tank. Go ahead and thank the group. And we'll go ahead and leave the instance group. But yeah, that's a rundown on tanking. That gives you a pretty good starter level of information. Like I said, I'm not going to go too in-depth on anything I talk about because I want what I talk about to be applicable to other games. And also, this is just beginner content. So this is like if you've never tanked before, if you're not familiar. So that's why I'm not going too in-depth. So next week, I'm going to be talking about healing. So I'm going to do a similar video, and I'm going to try to do this same format where I'm just kind of live commentating on what I'm doing in-game and see how that works out, see how you guys like it. And until then, keep practicing.